You are about to hear a narrative that is unsettling and not at all gentle. Because Meghan Markle had a chapter she never intended to replay before she became a duchess, before the cameras followed her everywhere, and before the world even found out who she was. The people who were closest to her at the time, those she trusted, confided in, and who witnessed the version of herself that existed before the spotlight, smoothed her edges, whispered a chapter. Markus Anderson was one of those individuals, her confidant, her gatekeeper, the man who understood her desires before she expressed them. Additionally, there was a story that Markus would not share in public, according to the group he had lived in. He cautioned people not to discuss this tale with her, a tale that silenced even those closest to her. The narrative revolves around a yacht that is floating off the coast of Nice. A hidden weekend, a meeting between a young actress and a royal prince that, if repeated loudly enough, might cause the earth beneath her meticulously constructed image to tremble. Well, the reported 3-day disappearance of Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew below deck on a millionaire's boat in Nice, France, is the subject of this tale. You did indeed hear me correctly. Meghan Markle spent 3 full days below the deck of a yacht with Prince Andrew. This is not a kind tale that isn't polished, appealing, or softened for the general public. It is a story relayed only in bits and pieces by witnesses who still won't reveal their identities. And we trace the path they all attempted to conceal tonight. Meghan hoped the door would remain closed, but we open it. And we board the yacht where it all started. Good France. February of 2002. The sky was an almost painted shade of deep blue. Even the largest boats were shaken like cradles by the sea's slow, powerful waves. A Greek millionaire's opulent yacht floated on that calm water. The crew went swiftly and silently. The deck was polished, and the lights were placed. They were prepared for one guest above all others, Prince Andrew, who at that time wielded more social authority than virtually anyone realized. However, someone else boarded the yacht before Andrew did. A woman with a bright grin, a little physique, and an ambition that seemed to permeate every space she entered with someone no one knew. Meghan Markle was her name. She was only an actress attempting to make a name for herself to the passengers on board. Someone who is talkative, amiable, and perhaps a bit too talkative. But Meghan wasn't simply going to the party. In the hours that followed, she would become the focal point of the weekend. She was also anticipating the prince. And those there said she was going to make sure he saw her. Meghan had already set the scene before Prince Andrew's shoes touched the deck of the yacht. According to witnesses from that evening, she spoke boldly and confidently, as if she were practicing for a future they anticipated claiming. She said that her father was a Hollywood lighting director who had won numerous awards. She had recently been cast in a television drama about an American hospital, and she had aspirations of becoming the country's first female president. It was written as though it had already been written, not perhaps, not with hope. This was not your typical conversation for a young woman just starting out at her job. Long before anyone realized it, this person was creating a narrative about herself and molding her persona. Later, those on the yacht acknowledged that while they weren't sure whether everything she claimed was accurate, they were certain of one thing. Meghan spoke as if she thought she would achieve greatness. Therefore, nobody was shocked when Meghan straightened her posture, smoothed her hair, and looked at the staircase as if she had been waiting her entire life for this moment when the yacht's crew finally reported that Prince Andrew had arrived. Because this night wasn't random in her thoughts, the witness claimed. She wasn't going to pass up this chance. Prince Andrew boarded the yacht with the assurance that comes from growing up in an environment of authority. He grinned, shook hands, and said a few brief things about the surf and the weather. However, those who kept a close eye on him claimed that as soon as he saw Meghan, his focus changed. Meghan also noticed him. It didn't take hours for what followed. It didn't require an entire night. Less than half an hour passed. According to witnesses, Meghan was already seated on Prince Andrew's lap in a small white bikini, leaning in close and speaking into his ear as if they had known each other for years by the time drinks were being poured and the music had settled into its evening rhythm. On the yacht, people exchanged startled but unconfused glances. Because Meghan had made it apparent, even in that brief period of time. She had no intention of floating on the sea. She wasn't attending a laid-back gathering. She was here to support him, and Andrew didn't appear to mind at all. The entire weekend changed at that point. The spark that transformed the serene, opulent yacht into the setting for a tale that would follow Meghan long after her name was known. A tale that takes us directly to the following segment. Nobody was able to overlook this section of the weekend. The 3 days spent below deck. The party on the upper deck continued with music, laughter, and the sound of champagne bottles being opened as night fell over the French coast. However, 2 individuals were absent from the entire situation. Meghan Markle with Prince Andrew. Meghan and Andrew walked away from the crowd and vanished down a narrow staircase that went to the lower cabins of the yacht, according to the witness who had been invited on board and watched the entire weekend from only a few steps away. And they didn't return when that door closed behind them. Not the next morning, not the next hour, nor even the following day. The prince and the young actress stayed in the bottom compartment for 3 solid days. Crew members discreetly brought them food and beverages, leaving trays outside for those who preferred not to be seen, much like room service. Not only did people wonder what was going on behind that locked cabin door, but they also muttered, laughed, speculated, and pieced together what they imagined was going on up on deck. Because Meghan didn't seem shy or enigmatic to them. From the beginning, she had been audacious, talkative, and self-assured. Earlier, someone heard her exclaim, "I've got my prince at last." That sentence suddenly sounded more like a mission than a joke to the group on the yacht. Even the employees were aware of Andrew's precise whereabouts and companions on the 3rd day. The folks who were present that weekend never forgot how quickly everything had happened, even though none of them would discuss it in public. This wasn't a casual flirting or a quiet friendship. Every witness on board said that this young woman aimed high and reached without hesitation. The tale continued after the yacht eventually made landfall. It just moved. The Mediterranean breeze clung to the visitors' clothing as the yacht voyage came to an end and they returned to land. Meghan did not disappear into thin air. Not even near. After the trip, she remained in contact with Bob, the witness, Theo, the millionaire's son, and Melanie, Theo's girlfriend. And a silent picture started to take shape as a result of those talks. They were informed that after those 3 days, Meghan and Prince Andrew did not just part ways. They reportedly stayed in touch. Calls, cordial messages, signs that something was still going on, but had just migrated to another city. At the time, Andrew was performing international duties while traveling throughout Europe as a sort of envoy. However, the source asserts that he and Meghan continued to communicate despite his schedule. It was more than simply a memory for Meghan. She seems committed to maintaining the connection. She had stopped boasting. She was not discussing politics, roles, or dreams. She was concentrating, because one thing became evident from the discussions that would follow. Meghan did not believe that everything would end after those 3 days. They were the start, she thought, and for a split second, it appeared as though she could be correct. Everything changed when Prince Andrew went back to London. The atmosphere changed when Prince Andrew returned to London. One chapter was coming to an end, while another was on the verge of closing. According to the insider, Meghan discovered his new office number, the official line the palace used for his work, rather than his personal cell. According to the witness's account, she started phoning in the hopes of getting through to him or getting a call back, but Andrew didn't pick up. He didn't answer the phones. Soon after, he allegedly told his employees not to put her through anything at all. This was more than simply quiet for Meghan. The same person she thought had given her a chance was rejecting her. The calls continued. The office continued to block. Bob's account states that Andrew's phone was always off. The bond she thought she had established and would maintain was no longer there. In that exact manner, she was said to have been a fleeting moment, a weekend, and a flame that faded the instant Andrew went back to his royal environment. Meghan saw it as something quite different. A chance vanished. A plan fell apart. And the future she believed she might achieve abruptly vanished behind palace gates. Unanswered calls, however, were not the end of the story. Because Meghan had something she really wanted to tell him. Something she thought would compel him to respond. Something she couldn't ignore, according to the source who spoke with Melanie. And that brings us to the next chapter, a plot twist that completely altered the course of events that followed. Meghan continued to try to get in touch with Prince Andrew, but not for attention or to relive the weekend. Even after the days of silence, ignored calls, and seemingly locked door. Meghan, Theo's girlfriend, thought she was pregnant, according to the individual who spoke with Melanie. Nor years after, nor months later. According to the source, she tried repeatedly calling Andrew's office in the weeks after the boat vacation because she wanted to notify him. She supposedly believed that this information would prompt him to react, or at the very least, give her one final acknowledgement. However, the phone never rang again. Andrew's world continued as if the yacht weekend had never occurred, blocking all calls and ignoring all attempts. Meghan was left on her own to make a choice that would affect her entire life. Based on the information shared, Meghan made the decision to terminate the pregnancy. It wasn't because she wanted to, but rather because she thought she was dealing with the fact that she was a child with a prince who didn't want anything to do with her. At the same time, she was becoming closer to a person in Washington who was connected to George Bush's Senate circle and who would provide her with a completely different kind of opportunity. That opportunity would be ruined by a child. A little girl would put her in touch with a man who wouldn't talk to her. Everything would be altered by a child. According to reports, she made the choice discreetly, in private, and without receiving a single communication from a man she had once thought had the power to transform her life. However, nobody anticipated what followed. 20 years went by. Meghan wed Harry, a royal, not Andrew. She rose to prominence on a global scale, attracted headlines, and was a lady in the public eye all the time. However, an old thread from her history reappeared in 2022 during the Queen's Jubilee festivities. Bob, the Australian backpacker who had seen it all, ran into the woman who had first told the yacht story. Meghan's name was used at some point during their discussion about life in England. It was only then that Bob recounted the tale from his childhood. The murmurs, the sudden familiarity, the yacht, the cabin, and the 3 days that seemed to be a secret that nobody could explain. The witness was now settled, older, and married to a Catholic woman who was unaware of his previous exploits. The last thing he wanted was worldwide attention with a baby on the way. However, he didn't conceal the tale itself. He didn't refute it. He only had one question. Don't call me by name. Bob turned down a $10,000 offer from a Mail on Sunday reporter who was prepared to publish the tale in exchange for his identify and picture. He agreed to let the narrative be told twice as long as he remained unseen. As a result, the story stayed hidden between personal discussions, unrecorded and unverified, but never forgotten by those who had experienced it. However, such tales seldom remain untold. They wait for someone to pull the rope while sitting motionless at the bottom of history like an anchor. That rope takes us to the last chapter. One question remains unanswered as the conclusion connects the past and present. If Prince Andrew had picked up the phone, how could Meghan's life have turned out?